What if the truth everyone believed about a girl was a lie too cruel to speak out loud? What if the thing they called her useless, barren, broken was the very thing that would soon tear a man's heart wide open? The wind swept across the Lark homestead like a voice full of judgment. Dust curled under the porch boards and rattled the loose shutters. Inside the small, dim kitchen, Mave Lark sat quietly beside the cold hearth, holding a chipped mug of tea she hadn't tasted. Her hands were tight around it, as if the warmth might return if she wished hard enough. Her mother, Ruth Lark, stood by the window with her arms crossed. She watched the narrow dirt road where a wagon rolled closer with each slow turn of its wheels. Her voice came sharp. "He's here. Stand up straight. Don't look sick." Mave rose slowly. Her knee brushed the chair, and pain shot up her leg. She tried not to wince, but Ruth noticed anyway. "For heaven's sake, girl," Ruth snapped, "stop limping. Try to look like someone a man wouldn't throw away." Mave swallowed hard. "Mama, please don't do this." "I can work. I can earn." Ruth slammed her hand on the table. "Work? You faint before noon most days. And what family will hire a girl who can't bear children? The doctor said your womb is ruined. You know that." The words felt like nails hammered into her chest. Mave had been 17 when fever nearly took her life. Dr. Ambrose Kent told her afterward that she might never carry a child. From that day on, her family's pity had turned to shame. Now at 19, she stood in her own kitchen being prepared for sale like livestock. Outside, the wagon stopped. Ruth fixed her shawl, smoothed her hair, and forced on a smile that looked just as cracked as the paint on the walls. "You'll thank me one day. At least he's a rancher. You'll have food, shelter, just keep quiet." Mave lowered her gaze. Through the window she saw him climb down from the wagon. A tall, broad-shouldered man with sun-darkened skin and a steady way of moving. Silus Danner, the rancher from Red Mesa. She had heard stories, how he lived alone after losing his wife, how he worked from dawn until the stars came out. Ruth stepped outside to greet him. "Mr. Danner, welcome. I'm so glad you came." He tipped his hat. "Ma'am." His voice was deep and slow, like gravel warmed in the sun. Mave stood silently near the door, heart racing. "Here's my girl Mave," Ruth said proudly, as if presenting a mule for auction. "She's quiet, obedient, no trouble at all." Silus looked at Mave. Not harshly, not with disgust, just a long, calm look, as if trying to understand the shape of her fear. Then Eli Barrett, the merchant, jumped down from the wagon with a stack of papers. "Simple agreement," he said cheerfully. "Mr. Danner covers her travel and care. Miss Lark here receives a fair amount, and everyone walks away pleased." Silus frowned. "Pays? What do you mean, pays?" Eli laughed. "Figure of speech. Her mother wants help with debts. You're taking the girl. Fair trade." Silas's jaw tightened. "Selling her, then?" Ruth's smile thinned. "Don't say it like that. I'm helping her start a better life." Maeve's breath shook. She looked up at Silus again. His eyes were dark, steady, and full of something she didn't understand. Anger, yes, but not at her. He stepped closer. "Do you want to go with me, Miss Mave?" Ruth let out a sharp, bitter laugh. "What choice does she have? She'll starve here." Mave looked at the open road beyond her porch, the sky bruised purple with evening. She wanted to run, she wanted to stay, she wanted to disappear. But something in Silas's voice wasn't force, it was care. "I'll go," she whispered. Ruth didn't even look at her. She grabbed the pouch of coins Eli handed her and tucked it quickly into her dress. Silus took Maeve's small bundle of belongings, a worn shawl and a book of psalms, and helped her climb onto the wagon. She sat stiffly, hands shaking against her skirt. Home disappeared behind them, shrinking into nothing. For a long while, there was only the sound of the horse's hooves and the rising wind. Silus drove quietly, his profile hard in the fading light. Finally he spoke. "Did you know they meant to sell you?" Mave nodded, blinking fast. "I knew they talked about it. I didn't think they'd do it so easy." Silas's hands tightened on the reins. No one should be sold. The words wrapped around her like a warm blanket she wasn't sure she was allowed to hold on to. The road curved around a small rise, and Silus stopped the wagon at the top. Below lay Red Mesa, his ranch stretching wide under the sunset. Endless grass, cedar trees, a cabin with smoke rising from its chimney. "That's home," he said. Mave stared at it, her eyes stinging. "Yours?" He nodded. "Ours, if you wanted." She looked at him, startled. Silus shifted slightly, his voice low. "You're not property. You'll have your own room. You can leave whenever you choose. You're safe here." For the first time in years, Mave felt a tiny part of her chest loosen, just enough to breathe. As they rode toward the cabin, a coyote cried in the distance. The sound echoed across the valley, lonely and hopeful at the same time. Mave didn't know what waited beyond those fences, but the wind tangled her hair and the sky turned gold above her. Maybe the life she was forced into wasn't the end of her story. Maybe it was the beginning. What if the quiet you fear becomes the first place you ever feel safe? The morning wind moved soft across Red Mesa, brushing over the grass and carrying the smell of pine and dust. Mave stood on the porch of Silus Danner's ranch house, her hands resting on the railing as she watched the sun climb over the valley. Her fingers were red from scrubbing floors. Her back ached from washing linens. But for the first time in her life, she didn't feel hated for breathing. Inside, Silas's boots thudded across the wooden floor. When he stepped outside, he held a steaming mug of coffee and looked at her with a quiet concern. "You don't have to do all that cleaning," he said gently. Mave startled and shook her head. "I just thought the place needed it." "It does," he admitted with a faint smile, "but you don't owe me chores." Her eyes dropped. "It feels good to be useful." Her answer stayed with him long after he went back inside. In the days that followed, the ranch found its own rhythm around them. At dawn, Mave fetched water from the well, watching mist stretch low over the fields. She gathered eggs from the hens, though one furious rooster chased her across the yard until she climbed the fence laughing. Sometimes Silus watched from a distance, arms crossed, pretending not to smile. "You hum when you're thinking," he said one morning when he caught her perched on the fence rail. Mave blushed. "My mother used to say it keeps loneliness away." He adjusted his hat. "Then you hum as much as you want." She found herself watching him longer than she meant to, the steady way he mended fences, the calm way he spoke to his horses, the quiet strength behind every tired movement. It was a different kind of silence here, not filled with judgment but with peace, a peace she had never known. But old fears have long shadows. One afternoon, she burned a loaf of bread. The smoke filled the kitchen, dark and choking. Panic surged through her like a slap. She froze, hands trembling, waiting for the yelling, the anger she'd learned to expect. Silus rushed in coughing. "Mave, are you all right?" Quote. "I'm sorry," she blurted, her voice shaking. "I ruined it. I'll make another." He raised a hand gently. "It's just bread." Her breath faltered. "But I—" "Mave," he said softly but firmly. "Nobody's angry." She stared at him. Those words felt foreign, unbelievable. He stepped closer. "You don't have to flinch here. There's no one waiting to hurt you." Her eyes filled with tears she tried to hide. Silus didn't push. He took the burnt loaf off the stove, set it aside, and poured her a glass of water. Then he walked out quietly, leaving behind warmth she wasn't sure she deserved. A week later, he took her with him to mend the east fence line. She rode beside him, dust gathering on her skirts, her heart strangely light. When they stopped for lunch, he handed her half his sandwich and a canteen. "It's beautiful here," she said softly. "I used to think the world was small, just our farm and the road to town. But it's endless." "It can be," he said, "if you let it." She laughed quietly. "You sound like a preacher." He snorted. Never had patience for sermons, just life. Quote. Her laughter surprised them both. It had been years since she'd heard herself sound that free. That night's sleep did not come easy. She stepped outside, wrapped in a quilt, staring at the stars. Silus was already there, sitting on the porch steps. "Couldn't sleep either?" he asked. She shook her head. "Too quiet." He chuckled. "Folks say the stars whisper to the ones who listen too close." Mave looked at him, her curiosity gentle. "What do they whisper to you?" His eyes flickered with old pain and soft hope. "They remind me of what I've lost and what I still have." She sat beside him, close enough to feel his warmth. "Do you ever wish you could change the past?" she asked quietly. Silus shook his head. "You can't fix it. You just learn to live in the pieces it leaves behind." Mave's voice trembled. "My mother used to say I was a mistake, that no man would ever want me, that I'd never give anyone a family." Silus turned sharply. "Don't say that." "She told me it was true," Mave whispered. His voice grew firm. "Your worth isn't in what you can give. It's in who you are when everything's been taken." She stared at him, breath trembling. "You work with everything you have," he said softly. "You laugh like someone who fought to earn it. You make this place feel alive." Her eyes widened. "You mean that?" "I don't say things I don't mean." Something broke open inside her, something long buried. Silus leaned back on his elbows, looking at the sky. "You ever notice how quiet the world gets before something changes?" Quote. Mave looked at him. "Is something changing?" He smiled faintly. "Feels like it." Her blanket slipped from her shoulders. Silus reached to pull it up, but his hand brushed her arm instead. They both froze. "Mave," he whispered, "tell me to stop and I will." But she didn't want him to stop. Slowly she reached out, placing her hand over his chest. His breath caught. Their foreheads met, a soft, trembling closeness full of everything unspoken. She closed her eyes as his hands cupped her face. "You deserve to be loved," he murmured. Mave's voice shook. "And you?" "I didn't think I could love again," he said, "until you." The kiss was gentle at first, then full of everything they had both held back for too long. The wind carried the echo of their breath, the land holding them like a quiet witness. When they finally pulled apart, Mave laughed softly. "If my mother could see me now." Silus brushed his thumb across her cheek. She'd see the woman she never let herself become. Her heart swelled. "You make me feel like I'm worth something," she whispered. "You always were," he said. The stars shimmered above them as dawn crept over the hills. None of them knew that soon everything would change again. What if the thing the world used to shame you becomes the very miracle that saves you? The morning light settled soft and golden across Red Mesa. The chickens clucked lazily in the yard. The wind carried the smell of hay and warm earth. But inside the cabin, Mave sat frozen on the edge of her bed with her hands pressed to her stomach. She hadn't told Silus yet. For 2 weeks she'd hidden it. The dizziness, the missed days, the fluttering inside her that felt nothing like fear. She told herself it was nerves. She told herself she was tired. She told herself it was impossible. She'd been told her whole life that she could never carry a child, that her body was broken, that her womb was useless, that she was useless. But when Dr. Ambrose Kent stopped by to leave medicine for one of Silas's horses, he had taken one look at her pale face and quiet trembling. "Mave," he said gently, "have you been sick in the mornings?" Her silence gave him all the answers. He smiled softly. "Congratulations." Her world tilted. Now she sat alone, whispering the words to herself again, "with child." The cabin door opened quietly. Silus stepped inside, brushing dust from his hat, but froze when he saw her expression. "Mave, what's wrong? You look white as a sheet." She stood slowly. Her hands trembled as she reached for him. "Silus," she whispered, "I have to tell you something." He moved closer, worry tightening his jaw. "Are you ill? Did Dr. Kent?" She took his hand and guided it to her stomach. "No," she said softly, "I'm not sick." He stared at her, confused. "Silus," she breathed, tears filling her eyes, "I'm carrying your child." The world stopped. His breath caught. His body went still. His hand stayed against her belly like he was afraid to move, afraid to break the moment. "Mave," he whispered, "are you certain?" She nodded. Dr. Kent confirmed it. Silus sank to his knees right there in front of her, his hands spread across her stomach like he was holding something holy. His eyes shone with disbelief and fierce, joyful sorrow. They told you that you couldn't. His voice broke. What the world stole from you, God gave back. Mave touched his cheek, her tears falling freely. You believe me? He looked up at her as if she had lit the whole world. I believe you're a miracle. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight, his lips pressed to her stomach, her hands tangled in his hair as she cried and laughed all at once. For the first time in her life, she felt whole. But peace never lasts long on the frontier. 3 days later, a wagon rolled toward the ranch. Dust rose behind it like a warning. Silus was out near the corral when he saw the driver's face. Eli Barrett. Silas's jaw hardened instantly. Eli climbed down, brushing dirt from his coat. Afternoon, Danner. You've got nerve showing up here, Silus growled. Eli smirked. I came to collect what's mine. Silus stepped forward, his voice sharp. You don't own anything here. Eli shrugged. Maybe not, but I sold you something under false claims. Ruth Lark said the girl was barren. Turns out she ain't. That means the deal was crooked. Silas's fists clenched. Eli leaned closer, lowering his voice. She belongs back with the Larks until the terms are fixed. In one swift motion, Silus punched him square across the jaw. Eli hit the dirt, blood trickling from his lip. You ever call her property again, Silus growled. I'll bury you myself. Eli wiped the blood from his chin and stood shakily. You made an enemy today, Danner, and the Larks don't forget debts. He climbed back onto his wagon and rode away. Silus stood trembling with fury. When he turned, Mave was standing in the doorway. She'd seen everything. You shouldn't have hit him, she said softly. Silus breathed hard. He called you property. Mave's eyes shimmered. That's what they think I am. That's what my mother made me. Silus stepped forward, taking her hands. Not anymore. You're not theirs. You're not anyone's to measure or shame. Mave trembled. Then I'll prove it, she whispered, by living. That night, she stood beneath the open sky, her hands resting gently over her growing belly. The stars flickered above like quiet witnesses. The wind carried the scent of sage and something sweeter. You're my truth, she whispered to her child. The proof they can't erase. Silus stepped behind her, wrapping his arms around her shoulders. What did you say? He murmured against her hair. Mave smiled softly. That this baby is the truth. Cruel voices can't drown. He kissed her temple. Then let's raise that truth together. The months that followed were full of peace and quiet miracles. The land bloomed early that spring. Wildflowers colored the hills. The river ran fuller. Even the wheat grew taller than usual. Mave called it grace. Silus called it hope. When her pains began one golden morning, Silus stayed by her side the whole time. His calm voice guided her through every cry, every breath. Dr. Kent arrived just in time. Hours passed like a storm of pain and courage. Then came a cry. Small, loud, alive. A baby girl. Silus held her first, tears slipping down his face as he knelt beside Mave. She's perfect, he whispered. Just like her mother. Mave touched the baby's cheek. Hope, she whispered. Her name is Hope. Mave Lark, the girl sold as barren, held her daughter against her heart, and the past finally loosened its grip. That night, Silus found her writing a letter by lamplight. To your mother? He asked softly. Yes, Mave whispered. But not for her. For me. She wrote, You said I was broken. You said no man would ever want me. But I found a man who saw my worth when no one else did. You sold me as barren. But where you buried me, I bloomed. I forgive you, because I deserve peace. Mave. She set the letter on the windowsill and smiled as the wind lifted it gently. Silus wrapped his arms around her from behind. The wind carries your strength, he murmured. No, she whispered, watching the letter settle again. It carries forgiveness. Inside the cabin, baby Hope laughed softly in her sleep. Outside, the stars blinked bright over Red Mesa. And Mave whispered into the quiet night, "Where they tried to end me, love made me begin."